Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Robert Gwaltney, author of The Cicada Tree. We're going to be chatting with him today all about his book and a natural event that stirred his world. Hello, Robert. Welcome.
Hello, Lori. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And happy Earth Day to you.
Happy Earth Day.
It's Earth Day today. Yes. What do you enjoy about nature, Robert?
What do I enjoy about nature? I think that it's hard to have grown up in the South and not have been exposed to a lovely environment. Certainly, I think that place certainly is a character in Southern novels, and it's a place in my debut novel, The Cicada Tree. I do have to say, I enjoy cooler temperatures, which is incongruous with being Southern. I think that I'm probably more of a Georgia mountain boy than I am a coastal beach sort of fella.
Hmm. Yeah, the cooler temp. So what feels good for you? Like, what would be the ideal temperature?
Yeah, so year round, I think. I love a change of seasons, and we don't get a lot of that in Atlanta, but I do enjoy, I think that, low 70s, year round could be quite comfortable. But when it gets above 70, I'm an air conditioning sort of fella.
Like, all hands on deck with the
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm not real outdoorsy.
My idea of camping, Robert, is more like a hotel staycation or a fun little loft where I'm surrounded by the outdoors, but I'm like inside mostly.
Agreed. You and I would get along beautifully if we ever travel together because I do love, for example, um, be, I'd love to be able to see the beach from a lovely view where it's comfortable. I don't necessarily have to be on the beach, but I do love to enjoy, I do love a beautiful view. I love lovely vistas, but I don't have to be in the midst of it.
Hmm. No, you understand your enjoyment from afar.
Yeah. Well, I think that as writers, I am an observer. So I do I don't know, I feel like I do observe life sometimes from a distance, and I do have to sort of push my way out into it so that I can be part of the living.
I love that. How you have that different of perspective as a writer, you have to look from different viewpoints farther away. I love that. Yes. Can you share with our listeners and viewers what the cicada tree is all about?
Sure. So I will give you the elevator pitch. The summer of 1956, Annalise Newell, an 11-year-old whiskey drinking piano prodigy, encounters the wealthy Mayfield family, a family that possesses a supernatural beauty that others refer to as that Mayfield shine. It's this initial encounter that stirs obsession within young Annalise, setting her down a path of dangerous games and manipulation, all of that culminating in a cataclysmic plague of cicadas.
Okay. So, where did you first get the idea for your novel through that whole beautiful plethora that you just wove and gave to us?
It's interesting. I had an opportunity to participate in a writing conference this past Saturday, the Georgia Writers Association Red Clay Writers Conference. And I talked a little bit about the fact that the Cicada Tree was a result of another failed novel. So I'd started to write a novel that was going to take place in the 1970s from the point of view of an 11-year-old boy. His mother's name was Annalise Newell Darlington. And about several chapters in, she became, I became enraptured by her, not because of all the wonderful things that she was doing, but she was making some really awful parenting choices. And she was so fascinating to me that I began to wonder what she must have been like as a girl. And so that really was the genesis of the Cicada Tree. So I took that story that novel that I was working on that I really wasn't feeling comfortable in, And I took the story back to 1956 and I told her from the point of view of the protagonist's mother. So rather than telling the story from her 11-year-old son's point of view, I told it from her 11-year-old point of view.
I really love, because I'm a big fan of generational stories of like hearing how people like change over time from childhood, adolescent into adulthood, and all those layers of how they got there. So I love how you almost took it backward of like, how could you possibly become this character? But I have to understand where it starts.
Exactly. And the cicadas, really, that really wasn't an element in the original story. And that really, when I started to live inside and inhabit this 11-year-old girl, really, it's a story told from the point of view of an older Annalise Newell looking back on the summer of 1956 when she was 11, when she first tasted music, when she first saw music, when she first encountered the beautiful Mayfield family, that impetus for the obsession that really drives the story forward. But there was a summer, I think probably the summer of my fourth grade year, where we had a brood of cicadas that made its way across the South and into Cairo, Georgia, the small town that I grew up in. We were covered up with the things, and we actually called them incorrectly. We called them locusts, but for purposes of the novel, I call them cicadas because that's what they actually are. But we had their shells; they left their shells on the trees, and I would see them, make their way out of their shells into these fully formed cicadas with wings, and I was so intrigued by that, and it stuck with me. And it just seemed, because it made such an impression that summer all those years ago, it felt thematically, because it is a coming of age story, and because of the secrets, and because of the fact that cicadas spend so much of their life as nymphs beneath the ground, I sort of created this mythology to accompany the story, because it is Southern Gothic. And of course, as with all Southern Gothic stories, there are always secrets, layers and layers of secrets.
Tell us about your main character, Annalise, some things that you loved or found fascinating about her.
I think that, I can relate to all of the characters in the book in some way. I think there's some element of me in all of them, even in the horrible characters, the antagonists. But what I can relate to most about Annalise is that, growing up in Southwest Georgia, just sort of this, somewhat comfortable middle class existence. But I was always fascinated with individuals who I thought had more glamorous lives than my own. And I think that that's something that I gave to young Annalise, because she's fascinated by the Mayfield family. And it wasn't until she met the Mayfields, this family of immense wealth, that she actually was more aware of her own poverty. And so Annalise, I think very much like myself, was fascinated with other people. They're good elements to Annalise. Their jealousies, which I think are fun to play with within a coming of age story. And there's this element of music. She's a young piano prodigy. I'm not a pianist. I'm a failed pianist. I took 1 year, but I was in the school music program from the sixth grade up until my senior year of high school. Concert band, marching band, jazz band. So I did share a love and appreciation of music, much like young Annalise.
Mhm. The way that you created your setting, Robert, was almost like it had its character all on its own with the vivid sensory details that you placed in there. Where did you draw from to create that setting that brought so much life to this novel?
So I think that that's the allure of many Southern novels, or the world of the South for many, is just that sense of place and the sheer beauty. The South comes with it. There's this Southern Gothic is this, in my opinion and in my definition, it's the way to sort of make sense of the very troubled past that the South has experienced, racial, social disparity, but also, in balancing that with this romantic notion that people have of the South. So really trying to make sense of that, and especially for a Southerner like me, that's really been sort of part of my own personal evolution. But I think one of the things that I love most about the South is the beauty of the place, except for at times the oppressive heat. But I think that what's so wonderful about that is that it can help drive tension. So there are those elements of nature that can help drive the tension in a novel. So there's the heat. This takes place in the summer of 1956. There's that ever droning commotion that the cicadas make, all ways and devices within which you can help build tension for your reader.
And you definitely did a beautiful job of taking the reader there with all of those sensory details, from the sound to, I feel like there were moments where I could taste things that I'd never experienced before. I could feel things that I've never been in before, because it was so vivid. How you placed us within your setting was beautiful.
Thank you.
Cicadas. What did you learn about them that you did not know before you wrote your manuscript?
A lot. So I think that there are, gosh, I don't know the exact number, but there are many, many species of cicadas, and there are only a handful really that are periodicals. So you have your 17-year brood, you have your 13-year brood, your 17-year brood. What's fascinating is that, and they have a very short lifespan. Cicadas start out as nymphs. So they live in the ground for many, many, many years, just waiting. And like clockwork, when the clock ticks, the 13-year, the 17-year broods will emerge. It's a very short lifespan. The nymphs, they climb up, they attach themselves to trees or to fence posts. And then they emerge as cicadas, and then they mate for a very brief period. So they mate, they lay eggs, and then those nymphs hatch, and they make their way back down into the ground. One of the things that that I didn't realize at the time is that cicadas, it's the males that make the noise. Can you imagine that? It's their mating call. So all of that ruckus is made by the male cicada, and they actually make the noise by they have this exoskeleton tymbals, and it is from the rapid movement in and out of this exoskeleton that produces this sound. And the sound is at such a decibel that they can be as loud as a rock concert. So it could,
Wow.
in pair over long periods of time, could have an impact on your hearing over time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I didn't even know. I knew a little bit about the sound, but the fact that they have the ability to have that much volume and depth that's like a piercing nature, I had no idea.
I think a lot of people just assume, like crickets, that they make the sound by rubbing their legs back and forth together, but it actually is this rapid movement of the exoskeleton. So it's like playing an instrument.
And now that makes me curious of like, how does that feel within their little body? Like that vibration has got to be insane.
I mean, they're in their mating mode, so it's very frenetic.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that they just feel riled up,
They're ready to go.
ready to go.
Do you have a specific setting or ambiance that you like to create when you're writing?
I'm a writer of many rituals, and I'm very, very impacted and affected by my environment. My home is is very important to me. So I like to be able to. There's not a lot in life that we can control, but there are elements of it that we can. And one of that, I think, is your surroundings, your own personal space. So I've carved out an office in my home. I'm actually doing this call in my Easter Seals, North Georgia office. By day I work in nonprofit leadership, but I have my own writing office at home. And well, first of all, I always have to have dark roast coffee. I'm an early morning writer. Not a lot is going to happen. If you told me I needed to go write a chapter right now, it would be very challenging for me to do. But I like candles. It's very woo woo. And I drink dark roast coffee. And sometimes there's music involved, not with lyrics typically, but something to help just get me in the mood of the scene that I might be writing.
Robert, I think we would definitely connect and become very good friends. Candles have to be
I love
everywhere.
that.
When I do anything creating or talking or producing, there has to be candle.
I agree. There's something about that flame, that creative flame, I think, that just sort of opens up that realm of creativity. Some people probably would just giggle at me saying that, but it really, for me, um, before I can write, if it's not a candle that's lit on my desk, I will turn the electric fireplace on just so I can have that flame.
That visceral feeling, like
Yeah.
it just, I agree. It sets something off of like, okay, we're ready. Here we go.
And because the tone, because I there's this at times this melancholic um, aspect of the writing that I do. It's I like dim lighting, so it would be hard for me to write. It would be hard for me to write a challenging dark scene out on a sun porch. It would be really hard for me. I think you have method actors. I'm a method writer, so I do sort of like to create that environment. I do, well also, and it helps with noise outside of my office. But you'll often hear me say, "Alexa, play fireplace crackle." So I like to hear that sound of either a thunderstorm or a fire roaring or the crackle of a fire when I'm writing.
Mhm. Your Cicada Tree came out in 2022. Walk us through the process a little bit of going from idea to publication. What did that look like for you in your journey?
I wrote the Cicada Tree for many years, and I had that luxury because no one was really waiting for it. It took. I didn't really declare to many people that I was a writer. It wasn't until probably a year before the book came out that I felt comfortable enough and confident enough to declare I'm a writer. So one of the things that I always tell other writers is that if you engage in the act of writing, you're a writer. Publication doesn't really mean anything. Declare it to the world. But for me, so I wrote the Cicada Tree. I started writing seriously after I moved to Atlanta, probably on around 2003. And I knew that if I didn't start, I would never do it, and I just sort of had this vision of myself being a much older person at the end of my life, not having tried. And so, that scared me because I felt like deep down in my heart and my soul that, that I was a writer and that I needed to work at it and I needed to try. So I got busy. I joined the Atlanta Writers Club, joined a critique group. I took some additional writing classes. I'm not a creative writing major, but I took creative writing classes in college. And for many years, I just played in the creative sandbox. Um, then I started the novel, the failed novel that we discussed, that led me to the Cicada Tree. And when I felt like I was ready and confident to begin to get work out into the world, that's when I started to query agents. And then it's interesting. So my agent didn't actually sell the Cicada Tree, and that's a long story. I won't take us down that road today. But so I actually sold the book and made its way out into the world in 2022. Um, so there is something sort of comforting about not being on a timeline for your first book and no one really wanting or expecting it. Now I feel a greater sense of urgency after I've had one book out into the world. So I do have this sense of, well, I hear the clock ticking, but I also feel a responsibility for the very kind individuals who comprise my readership and who are interested in reading the next book.
Mhm. What have you enjoyed and experienced within the book community and book clubs, readers, that has really just made your life magical?
That has been, I think, one of the most gratifying elements of this debut journey of mine is being able to be out into the world. As you know, we spend so much of our time alone at the writing desk, and by nature, I think that a lot of artistic people are very insecure. I know I certainly am. I really don't have any more confidence than I had today than I had back when before the Cicada Tree came out. So I think that I'll probably always be anxious and I'll always be a little insecure. And I hope that that will help drive me to be a better writer. But what I've enjoyed most is being able to be out in the world, to be able to go to bookstores, to speak with book clubs, to talk to individuals who read the book and who enjoyed the book. So that's been very gratifying. And more than anything, I just wanted to have a humble seat at the table with the author community. So I love being able to engage with other authors. I'm proud to be able to know people that are more talented than myself, who are individuals who are very inspiring. I would say that 99.5% of the author community is beautiful and kind and giving. So my experience has been extremely positive being out in the world of other authors and engaging in the world of readers.
Mhm. Have you personally ever experienced a natural event that stirred your world?
Yes. Well, I think that aside from that time in the fourth grade, when the cicadas came out, and that really did have lasting impact, obviously, because it made its way into my debut novel. I did have one peculiar thing happen when I first moved to Atlanta in 2000 from Tallahassee, Florida. I was renting a space. I was living in a high-rise condo. I didn't know anyone. I really just moved here. There was an earthquake, a mild earthquake that happened overnight, which is something that never happens in Georgia. But I could feel, it woke me. I could feel the building shift, and it almost felt as if the floor was sliding in and out from beneath the bed. So that was a peculiar natural occurrence that was a bit nerve wracking. And then, of course, in the South, tornadoes. But I've never experienced one that was life changing, fortunately.
Glad you're here with us today. We're going to take it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Robert?
Ready.
First question: what's something that you found magical as you were growing up, other than the fourth grade?
Well, I lived in my head as a child. I think as most children do. But I think that when I think back and I think of magic, I always think about the holidays. Growing up in the Baptist church, we were a family that celebrated Christmas. So it was something always very magical about the holidays. Something about pulling out the Christmas tree and the decorations, and just the whole just that feeling that my world was coming together to experience this beautiful thing together. That was magic to me. And I think I've lost some of it. I do all that I can do to recapture and hold on to those childhood feelings. The older we get, the further and further away I think that they move beyond our grasp. But that's something that I do try to hold on to. I think being hopeful for me as an adult, magic equates to hope. And I think that, if without hope, it's really hard to continue making our way through the world.
100% agree. In your childhood, what was one of your favorite memories that you can remember?
Favorite childhood memories. Gosh, there are so many, and that's fortunate that I can speak to having had a wonderfully supportive mom and dad who made certain that we were safe and secure and that we did make good memories. I think that I've enjoyed summers and I enjoyed when we would have the opportunity to go on vacation. I think most children love Disney World. We would go to Orlando, and I remember, being so excited, getting up early in the morning, and mom and dad packing us into this old Oldsmobile that we had, and setting off from Cairo, Georgia to Orlando, Florida. So those moments were always magical to me, being with family and that sense of energy.
That sense of family connection and going on an adventure, there's nothing quite like that.
Absolutely.
Third question: what is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried? or you've just tried?
Yeah, I say that I have the the constitution of a plow mule. Yeah, I can eat just about anything. But the strangest combination. I'm trying to think of something that people might think is peculiar. So I recently had a conversation with someone. They didn't have this experience as a child, but in the South, there was this thing called pear salad. So basically, my mom would open up a can of pears, and then she would put a scoop of mayonnaise in the pear. She'd sprinkle some cheddar cheese, and then she would top it with a maraschino cherry, and we call that pear salad. Some people find the combination of mayonnaise with a pear quite disgusting, but actually, it's quite delicious.
I can say that I have never tried that before, but I'm insanely intrigued and I'm going to try it. So anyone
Google
who wants to try it with us, take a picture, we'll send it to
it.
Robert and give feedback.
Let me know what you think.
Before we end today, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
I think that living a creatively abundant life is, of course, first and foremost producing the work, but it's also being um, a good member of the literary community, to be an active member of your literary community. So for me, it's supporting other authors. I feel that there's room for all of us, and I think that it's our role, it's our duty, not only to produce good work, but to also support and uplift one another.
Amen. Yes. Where can our listeners and viewers find you after the show if they have any questions for you or would like to pick up the Cicada Tree?
Absolutely. So you can visit my website. I think all of my social media links are there, robertlgwaltney.com.
Perfect. And we will put that in the link below for easy access. Are you working on anything currently, Robert, that you can talk about for future projects to come?
I finished my second novel and it's out in the world. It's with a publisher for consideration. I'm hoping that they're going to love it and they'll take it on. It would be a good next step for me in my writing career. So keep your fingers crossed. I hope to hear something one way or the other within the next few weeks. But I did write a book. It's Southern Gothic, elements of magical realism, but more world building in this particular novel. And the working title is Sing Down the Moon.
Ooh, I just got chills with that title. Okay, so I'm going to blow out the candle. So we're sending like lots of just love and support and joy toward wherever that project is meant to go. It will go. Thank you so much for joining us today, Robert. It has been an absolute pleasure spending time and talking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for those who've joined us live and will join on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your week, to find the things that are working for you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps will you take next? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Robert. Have a beautiful week.